Welcome back to another episode of the Men Who Cry podcast. I am Jus Richards here to talk to you guys about a lot of different things. I am honestly just coming back from watching South Africa take on Canada. I promise you guys, we will be talking some World Cup, rather not WNBA. We'll be talking about that on today's show. But I forgot what it felt like to be in a room full of people and watch their team lose. Whoo, buddy, that did not feel good. Shout out to the South Africans that I met. Great time, a lot of music, a lot of vibes. Unfortunately, they lost, and Canada is moving on to the round of 16. But we will be talking about the NBA, but not just the NBA. We're going to be talking about, unfortunately, what I think is becoming a larger topic than what the NBA actually is, and just unfortunately, how we are not just talking about the NBA, but talking about sports. We have two distinct sound bites that came out in the past couple of weeks, both from ESPN employees, one from Vinny Goodwill, the other one from Bobby Marks. And both of these comments are very different in what they actually say. One is talking about a player, one is talking about the actual championship and what that means overall in the league. But it gets to the dire straits of what I believe is happening is the fact that we seem to now have taken our mainstream media and have essentially boiled it down to just takes. And it's one thing when you have First Take, Stephen A. Smiths of the world, even PTI is essentially a take show. I mean, PTI essentially was the original First Take, and they just kind of made it more bombastic. But the difference between, I would say, those shows in terms of what PTI was and as far as First Take is, you already kind of know what you're going in for, right? Like, it's the analogy I like to say. If I go into a steak restaurant, I'm not there to order goat, right? Like, you're going in there expecting to get something. So for the people who like these kind of shows, they get what they like and they receive out of it. But when we go on things like Get Up, which I believe the more understanding of what the show Get Up is actually like is basically for you to be informed, right? To tell the audience what is happening in today in the world of sports, and whatever the hot topic is, they might have a debate about it, but in large part is information. And what we are just seeing recently from these shows, even though I know Bobby Marks, his comments weren't actually on Get Up, he is a main contributor on NBA Today and Get Up. It's just flamboyantly stupid. There's no real other way to put it. And these things, I think, were either clearly said to spark some level of outrage, because they weren't necessarily informative, right? The Vinny Goodwill quote that we were talking about is him saying, by and large part, that when you have 8 different champions in 8 years, we haven't had a team go back to back since the Golden State Warriors almost a decade ago now. And basically now comparing the NBA championship to a participation trophy, which on one hand, I think the idea is that the NBA, for in large part, the large body of its work has been based on dynasties, right? I believe there's a stat that basically if you add Michael Jordan, Bill Russell, LeBron James, Magic Johnson, and Larry Bird, Steph Curry now, I guess, and Tim Duncan, you essentially account for probably 80% of the championships. I haven't even touched the Lakers, right? Where it's essentially just Kobe and Shaq, really Kobe, right? Because he was there for all 5. The league is by and large part has been dominated. The thing that has made it the most popular basketball league in the world is that of its run of dominance, right? We've had these teams go on stretches where they win 3 out of 4 championships, or win back to back to back, or, we win the Duncan era where they were just excellent for so long, and in that time they were able to win 5 championships. But we have to understand how difficult it is to win an NBA championship. These things are not easy to get. So many things have to take place for you to get so. And the league has shifted into an era of now of it being more wide open and for all fans to believe that they have a chance to win the title. But how does then that now contribute to the idea of it being a participation trophy, where now it's you are not fully validated as a champion unless you're able to win another championship, which factually is stupid. Like, I'm sorry, there's no other way to quantify what Vinny said. It was dumb. And having the league be in a space now where everyone is winning championships, seemingly, right, I think is an existential question for what the league wants to be, right? I just went on the whole thing about how the league has basically been dominated by a handful of really players instead of necessarily teams. But is it better for a league to where obviously not everyone has a chance to win the championship, but a vast majority of the teams now believe going into next season they have a legitimate chance to win the championship? The Pacers are going to think they have a legit chance to win the championship. The Celtics, the Nuggets, the Knicks, who just won the championship, the Spurs, Oklahoma City, like all these teams have a real reason to put themselves in position to win the championship. And to me, having multiple fan bases believe that they can win a championship is what makes the league great. Because I remember just a few years ago how long it was that people would just complain and be upset that it was just Warriors Cavs back to back to back to back, right? It was just one team, two teams were going for these championships. And by and large part, we knew who was going to win the championship at the end of the day once Kevin Durant joined the Golden State Warriors. I would argue that most fans do not like that. I would even argue that casual fans do not like that. What I think we found most about this run in the postseason and this finals between the Spurs and the Knicks is that fans like stories. They like the idea of what a player is and how they're able to overcome things. They like the story of a Jalen Brunson. They like the story of the Knicks not winning a championship in 53 years, New York City, the home of where basketball is the most dominant sport in terms of how many people play this sport in this city. They like the story of the prodigy of Victor Wembanyama getting humbled in the finals, right? Like those things are what drive people and get them truly into the idea of sports, right? I was listening to Sports Gossip, and I apologize right now because I don't remember the ladies' names on the show, but it's a great podcast, so please listen and subscribe to that. But they were basically talking about game 4 of the finals, right? That crazy game, comeback. And they were talking about how many things like transpired from that, like how many people were talking about that, how it was basically one of the things that everyone was talking about on the streets, how they were seeing so much Knicks gear and Knicks paraphernalia just floating around, how they're going to make documentaries and stories and all this stuff. And their whole point is that what makes sports work, what it makes it work is essentially is moments like that. Things that get you to come back, things that you can't script, you can't write out, right? You have to be able to see this in real time and believe that it's happening and understand that you are experiencing something that you might never see again in real time. And that's why all these other tentacles work. It's the reason why I'm trying to do this job. It's the reason why ESPN gets all that money to post the sports. It's a reason why Get Up is a show. And when you say things like you want to think that it's a participation trophy, all it does is make fans mad. And all the stuff that gets people to come back, you piss on it. And so from that statement, pivoting over to what something Bobby Marks said is in the same vein, where Bobby Marks, if you guys don't realize, was talking about Jalen Brown on the Boston Celtics, who is in trade rumors. He's been in trade rumors pretty much since this offseason kind of begun. And at first, it felt as if that he was just in trade rumors with Giannis, because the Boston Celtics were looking to try to get Giannis, who subsequently went to the Miami Heat. But now it just seems like they want Jalen Brown off the team. And a little bit of a side note, not saying we call this, but like this is not anything surprising for anyone here who listens to this podcast, because like I said before, Jalen Brown was the Finals MVP, was the Eastern Conference MVP. He has been a multiple-time All-Star. He has been an All-NBA player multiple times. And he lost in round 1 this year and went on a microphone and said that this was his favorite season. This one was. And what ends up happening is that while these players can get a lot of money, they can get a lot of accolades, they even get a lot of awards, right, for recognizing what they do. At the end of the day, deep down, all these guys want to be that guy, right? And there's no amount of money, there's no amount of awards, there's no amount of anything that will fill the void of just knowing when you walk in the gym, I'm that guy on the team. No question, no ifs, ands, or buts. And so the Celtics are trying to get ahead of this and trade Jalen Brown somewhere in the NBA. And then Bobby Marks was talking about it and trying to say that he doesn't really have a market, which seems interesting, but go ahead, sir. You seem to have sources and try to figure out why that he doesn't have a market. And his overall point in large part is saying that they believe analytically that he was their 7th best player this season on the team. Not the 7th best player in the NBA, the 7th best player on his own team. Now, I think what we just need to do is ban the word analytics. It really has done wonders for people who love to spout this knowledge on people and make it so part of the discourse as far as NBA talking points. But the reason why it's so stupid and the reason why it's so silly is somewhat a paraphrase of what Josh Hart said, right? Like Josh Hart, former Knick, hopefully never former Knick, current Knick, NBA champion, former Villanova Wildcat, basically kind of said that analytics is just for nerdy white guys to get you off the team. And by and large part, like, that's not really wrong, right? Like, it is the same thing that I said for people, if you go into an office, right? I don't know everyone's work situation, right? But most people, I would say, if you work in corporate America, you probably have a hybrid work system. Probably like 80% of the country has a hybrid work system. Maybe 75% has a hybrid work system where you work some days in the office and some days you work from home, right? And some people, I'm not snitching on nobody, they don't go in that much. And it's some version of people track it. Now, some people probably do it a lot more stringently for depending on the type of work that you do. Others probably don't. But the reason why I bring this up is because analytics are a lot like the swipes or the things that you need to get into your office, right? If they want to get rid of you, they'll find whatever reason they need to say to get rid of you, right? If you've been doing your work and they like whatever you do and you're hitting their numbers, you're fine. But if they don't like it, all of a sudden you not coming in becomes an issue. You haven't been coming in for months. You know what I'm saying? But when they need to get rid of you, then that's the reason why they need to get rid of you. Oh, you never really were coming in and yada, yada. And like, this is the time they have to do it. It's the same thing with analytics, right? You cannot be someone who watches basketball, understands the game, and truly believe that Jalen Brown was the 7th best player on his own team, right? Basketball is the one sport that I believe is suffering from a true divide between the nerds and like former athletes, right? I think no other American sport really deals with this issue. Baseball doesn't, because by and large parts, it is the numbers that they have, and the numbers are what dictate people's play. And by like, there's no idea that if you hit a bunch of home runs, that you are essentially a worse player than someone who doesn't hit a lot of home runs. The only guy who probably doesn't fit into an analytical model and and people think he's a good player is probably Luis Ariz. Luis Ariz plays for the San Francisco Giants right now. He hits no home runs, but he's batting over 300 or damn near every single season of his career. But analytics and baseball are just like so married together that it's hard to even tear these two things apart. Football, I think, is also in that space, but they don't put analytics in your face in that way, right? There's no fundamental thought of the game because there is a level of physicality that is just demanded when you play. And if you are not able to play physically, they don't give a damn how many times you throw the ball or run the ball. That's just a part of it. Whereas in basketball, when we have this revolution of the 3-point shot with Steph Curry coming to the league, analytics have now almost superseded that. To where now, as I said before, you can basically make whatever the hell you want up analytically if you need to be. And I think that is where the nerds and the hoopers are constantly having this beef. Being smart should not be a problem. Understanding math or getting more knowledge should never be looked down upon. The issue that comes into play is when you use those numbers to prove something that when fans watch sounds dumb. And that's not going to fly. So when Bobby Marks says things like this, it just sounds ridiculous. And it doesn't get the same type of reaction that I think he was hoping for it to get. And so all these two things are very important because it comes down to a fundamental question of what exactly is sports media for, right? Like, what exactly are you here to provide? In my opinion, I think sports media is here to provide information to fans to be able to make them smarter about what is currently happening in the league that they follow. I think that fans, as much as people online try to say that they don't, I think they love hot takes. The numbers back it up. There's a reason why First Take is still going on and on and on and on for I don't even know how many years at this point that show has been on television. And that segment of sports will always be there because that is essentially barbershop talk. That is what it truly, at the end of the day, just boils down to, right? It's a bunch of dudes in a room having a conversation about sports. What gets it to get off the rails is when you feel like people are now just throwing things at the wall because they need to hit certain metrics and numbers. And for a large part, that is what ESPN has truly felt like for a number of years, is that there's just a bunch of people up there throwing stuff at the wall that doesn't really make any sense. You can say things that seem quote unquote outlandish without it being so bombastic and crazy. If you want to believe, right, in Steph Curry being drafted, like this guy might be the best player in this draft, that's not an outlandish take, but it's out there. It's probably not something that most people believed at the time. It ended up being right, but those things are not going to be considered crazy. If you thought Ben Simmons was going to be the best player in his draft, that at the time looked like it could have happened, and it didn't happen. It's okay for people to be wrong. I think the thing that people truly get into, not dealing with the brain dead people on Twitter, but the people who have essentially a high level of working frontal cortex, prefrontal cortex, is the fact that you have to say things that at least have some level of backing behind it, where the rational person can at least reason with why you're getting with that. But the two things that were just said that I just spoke about made absolutely no fucking sense. And it is part of the reason why a lot of people distrust what's happening in media today, because you can't go there and say things like that you can obviously look and just being wrong. All right, going to take a quick break and then come back with what's happening in the NBA offseason. All right, man, I'm going to clap when I come back. All right, we're back. With some couple of moves that are already done so far. This will be posted on Tuesday, which we are recording this on Sunday. I should record this Sunday night. And there will be moves that will happen between now and the time that this gets done that can't do anything about that, But listen, hopefully those things don't take place until after this show is posted. But I want to start with some of the trades that already happened. First off, the trade that I think was probably the most surprising for most people was LaMelo Ball getting moved to the Minnesota Timberwolves for Naz Reid and picks in large part going to Charlotte. This trade was widely, and I mean like widely, ridiculed by people. People who I listen to and I think are pretty smart about what they're talking about. Nick Wright, Ryan Russillo. So many people went on and basically trashed this trade. And I understand the backing, the reason why people made this idea. LaMelo Ball is the king of the YNs, and he is now moving over to Minnesota, where he is now meeting, I don't know, his court jester. I don't know if you want to talk about his rival, but the other part of the YN crew and him are now fully meeting, right? And are going to make a slime kingdom that only the women in Minnesota have to handle. I know a lot of Republicans are so concerned about the birth rate. Check out Minnesota by like next year, December, and we'll see if there's still a problem with that. I personally believe that there is a different kind of mindset in terms of what's going to take place in Minnesota. I actually kind of like the trade for Minnesota because they needed someone to be a point guard late in games. You see a lot of times, Anthony Edwards has talked about this a lot. The fact that he feels like he's getting double teamed all the time, right? Once they got rid of Cat, that was one of the things that kind of always frustrated Anthony Edwards. And the biggest issue with Ants was the fact that obviously he's one of their best players. Having a point guard on the court at all times with this guy, whether it was Mike Conley, Io DeSumo when he got in late, DiVincenzo a little bit when he was playing a point guard, those guys weren't necessarily part of the best five out there. And also, those other guys weren't as good at decision making as Anthony Edwards was. And so you kind of always had this problem where you're going to need a point guard out there because Ant is, like I said, not only just always getting double team, isn't necessarily the best at doing decision making, but you're adding a player who, by and large part, isn't necessarily maybe one of your best five players to be out there at the time. And so for me, I looked at this as like, okay, they're getting a star player. They're getting someone who's in his prime. I mean, I'm pretty sure LaMelo Ball's like only 27 years old. Very young player. He fills a need. And I think his game and Anthony Edwards' game complement each other very well. The biggest issue, I think, for Minnesota is going to be twofold. One is they don't have any size, right? They traded away Naz Reid. They got rid of Julius Randle. They basically don't have any more power forwards. The other issue, and I think this is probably the bigger issue of the two, is LaMelo going to still be a child? You know, like he's been traded. I think this is a great opportunity for him. I think that this is the league pass team of the year because to me, I think that they have an excellent chance to come out the Western Conference next season, barring the rest of what they do in the offseason and barring if LaMelo Ball wants to actually like be a serious basketball player, because he is, I believe, one of the three most talented guards in the league right now. I am not talking about his ability to win. I am not talking about his overall demeanor. I'm talking about pure talent. If I had to simply strip down, pull a whole screen on the side and list all of the abilities that LaMelo Ball can do, he is up there with any guard in the league. He is that talented. He just acts like a child. And is this the point where he wants to stop acting like a child? I don't know, right? But to me, this is his best opportunity to show that he is a serious basketball player. And I think Minnesota also had to do this because anytime we've seen so far that a star player has left Minnesota, they has won a championship, whether it's Kevin Love, Kevin Garnett, Andrew Wiggins, and now Karl-Anthony Towns. They've all won championships outside of Minnesota. 3 of those guys were the number 1 overall draft pick to that team. They do not want to allow Anthony Edwards to follow in that trend of leaving and then going to a franchise and winning an NBA championship. A lot of people look at the trade, and I think the other reason why a lot of people look at the trade and look at it as being negative is the sense that San Antonio and OKC are all big right? They can also go double big. They have a lot of big players. Two things on that. One is, it's not like Minnesota's small. Like LaMelo Ball is like 6'7". Anthony Edwards is 6'6". They have Rudy Gobert, who's big as hell. Jaden McDaniels is 6'10". They have big players all around. They just not maybe have physical size, not super strong. But, and something that Zach Lowe said is that I don't think teams now should build teams to try and beat the other team. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of times before, what they were saying is that the Knicks have built their team to beat Boston, but that didn't really matter because they weren't able to beat the Pacers, right? It's like you need to build a team that's able to win a championship. You don't need to be the team that's going to be able to beat another team. Because as we've seen before, it is really up for grabs. No one has shown that they can hold on to the championship for any longer than a season. OKC was the best at it because this is the first time that we've even had a champion make the conference final in the last 8 seasons. I liked it for Minnesota, and I think that this will be a fascinating team to watch and see how they will, allow this to move forward and see how good their team will be come the regular season. But I actually like to trade. Miles Bridges to the Suns. I won't spend too much time on this. I'm more talking about this from the Hornets perspective. A lot of people give the Hornets a lot of credit for moving off from LaMelo Ball, and I don't think they know what they're doing. This seems like a money play in the sense of Miles Bridges and maybe potentially getting off his contract, because to me, this does not make the team any better. I'll look it up his contract as we speak right now. Yes, Miles Bridges had a $75 million contract. This season was going to be his last season. He was going to be an expiring deal. It seems like they did this because they wanted to capitalize on what he was. But yeah, Charlotte having a very interesting offseason because I haven't liked either of these trades. Now, obviously, they're going to be able to look at it and say, all right, now we have the ability to start Naz Reid. And Naz Reid is a very good player, but there was just something really fun and magic about what the Hornets were able to do in the second half of the season. And now they got rid of 2 really big contributing factors to it. So we'll see how the rest of there goes. Sliding over now to the aforementioned Jalen Brown and where he's going to go. And Jalen Brown is in a very tough spot because all the teams that potentially are looking to trade for Jalen Brown, right? If Jalen Brown goes to that team, I think Jalen Brown's going to be honestly in the same situation that he is in right now, where it's like he's just underneath whoever the best player on that team is going to be. If he goes to the Lakers, he's not going to be the best player on the team. If he had gone to Minnesota, he was not going to be the best player on that team. If he went to the Pistons, he was not going to be viewed as the best player on that team. And the only teams that I thought that he could have possibly gone to, been the best player, and they still have somewhat of a chance to win the championship, to me, was the Hawks. But if you're Boston, are we really trying to split Jalen Brown up into multiple role players? Which is ultimately why I think Boston put themselves in a really, really, really bad spot with not being able to get trading for Giannis, because now, unless someone is going to become available, and again, it's the NBA offseason, crazy things happen all the time. Unless someone truly shakes loose, who is a perennial all-NBA player, and Boston just views them as being a guy who they can use on the team, this is just going to make Boston worse. There are some beliefs that Jalen Brown is going to get traded potentially for Jalen Duren. So the Jalen's will be swapping spots. Spelled differently, however. I guess so. Like, I guess for Boston, that is for what they want to do. I just don't see. I think that they are just done with his shit. This is kind of what this screams to, like at some point, you've been with this guy for Jalen Brown's going to be a 10-year vet, I think 10, 11-year vet. It very much seems like they're just kind of over it. Whatever the stuff is that we might not seeing, they just seem over it because he has 3 years left on his deal. You feel as if you'll be able to work this out. This guy has been in trade rumors before, but the fact that you have at no point quelled this, to me, it comes across as like they're just done. And it's just a matter of time of where exactly this guy is going to end up playing next season, which we don't really know where he's going to play. I think the teams that I personally think would be really good for Jalen Brown, I think, like we just said before, I think Detroit makes some sense. I think Houston is a really, really good spot for him if they're able to keep Durant on that team as well. But the team, I just think for him, for what I think he wants, I think for what the team wants, I think Atlanta has made the most sense this entire time. They need that guy. That's what they essentially are missing right now, is they just need the dude who's going to be able to, hit shots late in the clock when they need to get a bucket. And while analytically, you can look at Jalen Brown as a guy who doesn't necessarily shoot a bunch of threes or whatever, all that stuff don't matter. And when it's late in the fourth quarter, you just need to make a bucket. Okay. And that's what separates you winning and losing playoff games, which will let you know whether or not you can keep your house or you have to put it on the market and take your kids out of school. That's the team I think that makes the most sense for him. Is that the team that's going to trade for him? We still do not know. But that's going to be kind of where it's going to be up for him. And that's really all the major NBA moves that we have so far. Obviously, again, by the time this posts, 20 more moves are going to transpire before that. But those are kind of the main ones that we really have. And the last other little bit that we want to talk about for the NBA before we slide over to its female counterpart is, I think this is the year that I think a lot of teams and fans are really experiencing the weight of what the second apron is. And the issue that the players have is they need to understand that a lot of times fans just don't care how much you get paid. It's important as far as how much you get paid, because it is not necessarily about your contract. It is about the contract that follows after you. And what you don't want to do is create a wage gap, or you don't want to create this too much of a scaling where the owners are making so much more money and the players' salaries are kind of almost staying stagnant, if not actually going down. And that is what we are seeing with the second apron. All reports are saying that James Dolan, the owner of the New York Knicks, is looking to not go over the second apron. That's going to be a different video, whether or not that's a good or bad move. But salary caps, by and large part, suppress wages. Simple as that. And when you gifted the owners this tool as far as the second apron and allowed them to have these massive amounts of penalties, whether they can say, these are the reasons why I do not want to go over this threshold, puts you in a really bad spot, right? Now, I do not necessarily believe in baseball that you just need to spend $500, $600, $700 million every single year in order to put the best baseball team together. I don't fundamentally believe in that, right? I think, honestly, baseball to me has the best model of it, is showing that you can pay your players whatever you decide to play, but put the onus on the GMs and the presidents to make that hard line. Don't give them their escape of saying, well, we can't go over this because of X, Y, and Z, because of this cap that we improvise. Because I don't think anyone will realize this. To be an owner of any sport in any league in America, you need to be a multi-time billionaire, not millionaire anymore, billionaire. And so these guys are not, and gals are not poor. They keep trying to sell to you that the super rich people are the poorest people, but they are not. They have oodles and noodles of money. And having a salary cap puts the onus on players to keep their salaries down in order to keep winning alive. Okay? And the players agree to it. so I can't really get too much on it. They went into this eyes wide open. But we are going to see more and more players take less money. It's just going to be what it is. And we are going to see less players get the Supermax. Is that necessarily good for overall health of the sport? I don't believe so, because I don't actually believe that that money actually gets pushed down to the other players, meaning the mid-tier players. I think what ends up happening is that the top tier players have to now cut some of the top, or if they're not able to, the mid-tier players are just not on the team, and it's replaced by, vet minimum guys. Last topic that we need to cover is a league that feels like it only breaks through when some bullshit seems to transpire. But the WNBA is once again in the news. Why? For a lot of reasons. I think this league is not ready to be a major league because they got something that every league dreams of. And I mean dreams of. And that's good PR. Caitlin Clark was drafted into this league 3 seasons ago. She's been in the WA for 3 seasons. While I would argue that she has personally not lived up to the height of what she is, I would say that she has not failed. I think because unfortunately, yes, I am a man. I only think about the NBA. I feel as if there's a little bit of like a Zion Williamson kind of deal going on where when she plays, there's magic, right? There's a lot of beauty in the game. But she herself has not won playing the postseason, and she's been hurt a lot. Not comparing in terms of weight, Caitlin Clark seems to be a very well-conditioned athlete, whereas Zion took a while before he was able to get his conditioning under control. And yes, what you're experiencing is a lot of new fans and new people who are in this league to, by and large part, watch Caitlin Clark. But you have to also understand that, that comes with dickheads. It just does. A lot of the players in the WNBA get a lot of hate and a lot of bullshit. So do college players. So do NBA players. So do kickers in the NFL. The abuse that the WNBA players might be feeling directed specifically towards Caitlin Clark, while I do not think that that is right, it is simply also part of the package. And it is not something that I think should be allowed, but is the reality of the world that we live in. And until that gets rectified in terms of the league, then we'll never be able to have any real discourse about what the WNBA provides, because WNBA is already dealing with a lot of things holding it back. One is misogyny. It's part of the league. But number two is it's a summer sport. It's a summer sport that is not only trying to take on baseball, but every single year is going to have some international event happening at the same time of their league, whether it's the World Cup right now, the Olympics in a couple of years, or European soccer, right? Or soccer. Some soccer thing will be transpiring as well in a few years as well. They broke through. They did the thing. And they got through and just seemed to constantly fumble at the 1 yard line. The worst of the worst people are winning this discussion because, unfortunately, this is the only time that the league gets discussed. And it's not when we are having the Commissioner's Cup that is taking place between the Liberty and the Vegas Aces, which is not talking about Marbury on the Toronto Tempo. They really got to change that name to Tempo to Turbo. Now I just screwed it up the other way. They're the Tempo, not the Turbo, but I keep calling them the Turbo. The Tempo just had 53 points the other day. Tied the WNBA record for most points in a single game. Tied for the most three-pointers made. That should be the big story. That should be the things that we were talking about of wow, another expansion team league basically got some leftover players, and this girl's going to make her first all-star team, and the tempo might actually be a playoff threat. Things like that transpiring, right? How the Liberty are dealing with the pressure of having a new coach and being the team that everyone thinks is going to make the NBA or make the WNBA finals. But we just keep talking about this bullshit. And it's everyone. No one's hands are clean. My hands aren't clean. Okay. I'm talking about this right now. I could have been talking about the WNBA at other points, but it is just so goddamn frustrating to talk about a league in where no one seems like they're having a good time. And this is where we're at now. This is what the league is. This is who's here. Unless we come to some like society's not helping. Okay. I do not think that Caitlin Clark needs to have her own set of rules, right? As someone who came on this pod last year who was saying that if this is a physical league and this is how it's supposed to be, then she's got to adjust to the physicality of the league, which all players have done, right? This is not the first small-ish guard to play in the WNBA, right? But we also can just say that what Alyssa Thomas did was not okay, right? And there's a history there. DeWanna Bonner is Alyssa Thompson's fiance. She was on the Fever last year. It didn't go well. They cut her. Okay. They probably don't like each other. We just fine. This ain't gonna be kumbaya. Okay. You can hate each other. But we just have to find a way to get that stuff to stop being the top layer stuff. And it to be the other stuff about the league that makes the league so special and great. Because at some point, people are just going to get tired of talking about this and just turn this thing off. But yeah. All right. Thank you guys again for listening to the Men Who Cry podcast. Please like, subscribe, review, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. If you're not doing these things, I have to assume you do not understand what I mean when I say Knicks in 5. Thank you guys again for listening. We'll be back later on in the week. All right, everyone.